Well, thank you and welcome everybody. This is consistent with our CD2H efforts to facilitate data interoperation within and between CTSAs, and in particular, look at how to manage research metadata, such as the kind of information that would go to CT.gov, that would be used in our CRMS systems, and that would be used in our IRB systems. Some of you may know I had 27 delightful years at Mayo Clinic, and I'm pleased to say that my colleagues are willing to present to us today of some of their efforts at Mayo to model this information. Michael or Robert, who's going to lead this?
Okay, so I'll let Bob do most of the talking, Dr. Hugh here, but I just want to first apologize to everyone for the last minute cancellation of our last meeting. So thanks for accommodating and apologize for all the inconvenience here. As Dr. Hugh said, we've been working at Mayo, on this one for quite a few years. Unfortunately, it was not an effort that I would consider that we did it in an ideal manner. I guess, to use an analogy, we first built a CT.gov registry system, and then later we built an epicenter and PLM, and which has a component called master study record. And this is all fit into what Dr. Hugh had just mentioned about the goal of getting some both data standardization and interoperability into a protocol information. But we did eventually get to the point. I think we have the right components to facilitate this type of work. So for today, Bob's going to show you both the protocol lifecycle management system and the epicenter, which stands for electronic protocol information center, and also our CT.gov registry system. So without further ado, I'll turn the podium over to Bob Gerke. Bob?
Okay, thank you, everyone. I'll try to see if I can share my screen here. Can you see it?
Not yet, Bob.
Bob's getting this out. If that's just a reminder, and it was noted in the chat, if you're not speaking, if you could please put on mute, just a little bit of background sound. Thank you.
How about now?
Looks good. Thank you, Bob.
Okay. All right, so I have a lot to go through in an hour, so hopefully I can get through it. So there's a lot to talk about, but I'm going to start out with our what we called our protocol lifecycle management project, and give you a brief overview of that and what problems we were trying to solve. So we had a business problem for a long time at Mayo, where we lacked a master study record, or Dr. Shute knows, I think we called it a protocol bus or a registry for a long time, but we finally realized it last year. So we had a lack of standardized, reliable, single source of information about our studies at Mayo. It was scattered about various systems, IRB, CCA, grants and contracts, etc. So that resulted in study teams and investigators having to do a lot of duplicate data entry. It also meant that we had an absence of standardized and aligned data between systems, etc. So in the end, we had the inability to accurately evaluate and report on Mayo's overall research portfolio. And now we have consistent information and a single source of information for a given study. In yesterday's world, we sort of created a derived study record. So in this graphic here, we had the study teams having to put information into all these various systems individually. And they had to duplicate a lot of information, like the study title went into the system a number of times. the study team, the rosters had to go into the IRB system, the CCA system. And so it had to be repeated over and over. We did create in the interim, and I'll demonstrate it today, is our epicenter, which is a data integration and service-oriented architecture platform that brings these data together from these systems and presents an overall view based on business rules and governance. But it doesn't solve the problem of the study team having to deal with all these various systems and the duplication of data. So in today's world with PLM and our master study record, the study team enters the information into the master study record, and from there it gets pushed to the various downstream systems. So the information that's in the master study record does not have to be replicated by the study team into the various systems. That happens through data integrations and information integrations between PLM and the master study record and those downstream applications. So how do we decide what we're going to put in the master study record? In the end, we decided that data elements that were common across research applications would definitely, we want to capture in the MSR so that it could lead to get rid of the data inconsistencies and eliminate the duplicate data entry by study teams. We also wanted to enter data elements necessary to capture base study descriptions, study methodology, and study eligibility criteria. We also wanted to put in data elements that would drive our study lifecycle workflows, which I'll demonstrate too when we get to PLM. But we enter a lot of operational data into the master study record that will drive dynamic workflows. And we also wanted to add data elements that we currently weren't capturing in any research system when those existed. So that's kind of the guiding principles of what drove us to the inventory of data that we put in our master study record. So the other main component of PLM is the study workflow. So the study workflow is variable and was all manual and lacked standardization. So that also contributed to inefficiencies and getting studies activated in the appropriate amount of time. It also, led to confusion among junior investigators who are new to these complex CTMS systems, and it gives them a sort of a roadmap or a guide to activate their studies and navigate through these complex processes. And then the graphic of what sort of the lack of workflow looked like in yesterday's world, where the study team literally had to interrogate all these different systems to understand what activities were completed, what activities needed to be completed, what was the overall status of the study. They sort of had to derive from looking at these various systems. So in today's world, we have a common guided workflow that gives real-time study status. So the study team interacts with the PLM workflow manager, and the workflow manager is in charge of interacting with the downstream systems to understand the status of the processes and workflow activities. So our PLM system is Velos. It's based on Velos research, and of course, being Mayo, we've added some add-ons to it to make it work within our function, within our organization. And so the four major components that exist that make up our PLM system is our master study record, which I've described, and our workflow management, which I've also described. There's also a little component called site participation management, where we track the sites participating in the study, their rosters, their approvals, their statuses at each of our research sites that may be participating in the study. And the fourth component is our research network management module, and this module tracks the organizations, people, and studies that Mayo interacts with, both from a participation standpoint, but also as we sponsor studies from a CRO perspective or a data center perspective. So all these interactions and ties between research organizations are managed through this network management. And it's primarily used by our cancer center as they manage the data coordination of large, complex, multi-site studies. This is the sort of the diagram of the system interactions between PLM and our systems within Mayo. So the green are sort of enterprise systems where we get success factors is where we get person training information. All of our user authorization and authentication comes from our master data management system. And of course, our unified data platform, our EDT is we replicate data into that for reporting. A few other key integrations, obviously, when the study team member enters the information to PLM, all that information gets propagated into their IRB application for them, so they don't have to replicate that into the IRB application. Likewise with code and coverage. We also have roster information that goes through our participant tracking system, and as well as from there it makes its way into the Epic environment, so we can track which patients are in what studies and for Epic. And then clinicaltrials.gov information gets imported into PLM, and I'll actually demonstrate this to you in a few minutes here. So the users, if we're participating in a study from a sponsor who's already registered it with CT.gov, we can just pull in a lot of the pertinent study information right from the clinicaltrials.gov website. And then our research regulatory services is a system that exists, and I'll also demonstrate that, where if we as Mayo have to register the study, in other words, we're the sponsor, then our research regulatory systems can pull that study information out of PLM and register it to clinicaltrials.gov, and I'll show you a little bit of that system later as well. This is just a quick pictorial of kind of the work we went through to define the data elements that would go into our master study record. Like here, study, whoops. Sorry. We used study type, and we would go through, we would pick a standardization source. In this case, our CT.gov drove our standard for study type and the applicable valid values, and then the definitions. And we went through this basically for every MSR data element that we had that we could find standards for. And we have about 150 or so data elements all told that make up our master study record. Okay, so that was kind of a whirlwind tour of what PLM is all about. Are there any questions before I sort of demo the PLM system? Okay, If not, let's look at the PLM system. So, let me see here. Suppose I got to sign in again. Nope. Okay, so we're looking at the home page for our PLM system, and I won't spend a lot of time at that. I'm gonna go through what I'm gonna go through in the demo is actually the process of creating a new study and populating it with the master study information and showing you bits and pieces of the workflow. So the first thing a user would do is go click the Create New Study button. And the first thing we have is what we call an intake form that really determines what type of study you have. And based on answering these few questions, we can determine what records and what types of study needs to be built in PLM for your master study record. So for this example, I'm just going to say a participation record. So Mayo is participating in a study run by another organization. So it's a sponsored study. I'll answer a few more questions about contact with participants. This just drives a little bit of the type of study record again. And then I'll click the Create Study button. And it tells the user that given the information that you provided, we're going to create a Mayo participation record, which is what we wanted. So now the system is going through and generating the appropriate records in the system to facilitate this study. So I'm just going to go right to that record that was created. So here's sort of the Velos interface now is where we're into. And there's what we call, there's two components of the master study record, which is what we call the primary information, which is contained in these three banners: study description, methodology, and study eligibility/recruitment. And then there's other operational data that get captured in various forms. So I'm going to just expand all of these items, and it gives you a flavor for what makes up our master study record. In this case, this is going to be, we're participating in a Pfizer study, let's say, and Pfizer has already registered the study with ClinicalTrials.gov. So I'm just going to key in that NCT number and tell it to import the information from ClinicalTrials.gov. So now the system is actually going out to ClinicalTrials.gov and pulling in all the information for this NCT number, which is the study that we're going to participate in. So I have the opportunity here to look to make sure that that's the correct study, and this is a study of ovarian cancer. And so it's the study I want, so I just click the import button. And now it's going to bring all that information from clinicaltrials.gov and populate my master study record. So if I expand all again, so now I have the study title, the lay title, the synopsis, the study methodology. It's a drug trial. It's a phase 3 treatment, the eligibility criteria, and the structured eligibility criteria. So all that information was actually now brought in from the NCT number. I'm just going to go ahead and click Save on this. Now that provides the basis for our study, master study record. Now there's other operational data that the users fill in based on type of study as well. So for instance, well, I'm going to talk a little bit about the workflow here too. So So on the left-hand panels here is actually workflow items to be completed. The users have two ways to look at the workflow. One is directly here to the left, but they also have the Manage Workflow Activities tab, which I'll show that to you in a little bit later. But right now, as the user's completing the study record, they need to go through all these individual forms to complete. So one of the forms is the main study attributes, and I'm just going to show you how that works. So if I click on this workflow item, it'll launch the main study attributes form. And here we can begin to provide more information about the study that helps with the workflow and other operational aspects of the study. So I'm just going to say we have just only Mayo sites. It's not involving the DoD. I am going to say that we have biospecimens, though, for this study. We have none of these risk factors. We have no protected populations. I am going to say that we're going to use our clinical research trials unit, our CRTU, for this study. And it is an industry funded study. So when I click industry funded, it's going to want me to specify who is the funder. So in this case, I'm going to say Pfizer. Oops. So I can search for Pfizer. Select Pfizer. And I'll say that they're providing the study drugs. And so I'll add them. This part of VELOS we don't like very much is these embedded forms that kind of take a while to build in the user interface. Okay, and then I'm going to say no external IRB, and now I'm going to say I've completed this form, and I hit submit. And you can see, since I completed that activity, it turns the icon green. So that form's been completed. And that's how I go and build out the information that's housed and becomes part of the master study record. Next thing I need to do is create some sites. So Mayo sites, that is. So which Mayo sites are going to be working on this study? So I'm going to say Rochester and our Florida site. And I'm going to say Rochester is our lead site. The lead site in Mayo's world is a site that, you know, initiates most of the work in the systems. They'll start the CCA. They'll be responsible for the IRB application, etc. So that's why we designate a lead site. So now I'm going to say complete. And now the system's going to go out and generate site records and site workflows for each of these Mayo sites that are going to be participating. Okay, so again, my sites are completed, so that turned green. So now I'm gonna sort of switch gears for a while. That's kind of a demo of how we construct the MSR. But now I'm going to kind of take you into the operational world a little bit and how the workflow works. So I go to associated records, and that's where I'm going to find my navigate. That allows me to navigate to my site records. So you can see I've created the Florida site and the Rochester site. So I'm going to work on the Rochester workflow. Okay, so here's the Rochester site. So if I go into manage workflow activities, it gives me another view of this panel, of the workflow panels on the side that allows me to take more actions against the workflows. So I'm gonna start out with the assessment phase of the study and the initiation. So there's some workflow activities here that are, say, the orange means they're not done and they're available to be worked on now. The gray is it's an activity that needs to be done, but it's not ready to be worked on because of predecessors. So I'm going to go quickly just complete these activities here and sort of give you a flavor for how the workflow works. So now I've completed all these orange activities. And if I hit save, you know, they're going to turn green. They're going to turn green both here on this report as well as the panel on the left. And now this activity says, will the study proceed is available to be completed. So if I go complete that form or workflow task, so I'm just going to tell it the study is going to proceed and we're going to start activities today. I'm going to complete the form. And now you can see, that all those activities turn green, and by default, it sort of compressed the assessment initiation phase, and it opened up now the assessment feasibility phase, and its set of workflow activities. And you can see some of the aspects of the dynamic workflow because we said we had biospecimens that generated this workflow activity. If you recall, I also said we're going to use our CRTU. That's why the request budget from the CRTU activity is there. And we also have, I didn't talk about this, but our clinical trials, our interventional clinical trials that are industry funded, we also have sort of a project management work schedule with start and end dates and plan dates that get tracked as well. So we don't do this on all of our studies, but ones that are more critical in terms of getting them open quickly is this plan dates, which is tightly managed by our Office of Clinical Trials. Okay, that's sort of a whirlwind demo of PLM. So I'll stop there and ask if there are any questions before we move on to our epicenter.
I'll ask one question, Bob, if I might. I mean, this infrastructure is very impressive, and I can see the thought and logic that went behind it. You know, in terms of members of the CTSA network or people working with clinicaltrials.gov and other infrastructures, how much of this either data modeling or specification or data element catalog is shareable?
So certainly the data element catalog is shareable, and all the work that went into that in terms of standards we used, etc. The system itself, like I said, it's built upon a Velos backbone. You know, I would think we could share, you know, our MSR build out could be shareable within Velos. I mean, the workflow is configurable. I'm not going to lie to anyone and say that the configuration is straightforward. You can see it's pretty complex based on predecessors and and logic, but all that is configurable. You could actually build that out. Each institution could build out their own configuration of that. So to some degree, I guess, parts of the system may be able to be leveraged if you bought Bellows and wanted to move in that direction.
I was just thinking in terms of logical models, but please continue with the demonstration. Are there other questions? No, then please continue.
Okay. Well, yeah, good question about logical models. We certainly our processes are modeled out, and they got built into the workflow processes,
Maybe Bob, I can chime
etc. But
comment before we go on is that this has been extremely beneficial to be able to see what you've done and what you haven't done for the study teams, and to come in and see what do I have yet to do and what have I accomplished that I can. So I think that on our end, we want to overemphasize that because it's been extremely valuable to study teams from a workflow standpoint.
Thank you.
okay, we can move on into the presentation here. Let's see. Okay, let's talk about Epicenter next. Michael alluded to it as our electronic medical information center. And it really is, it is two things. It's a data integration platform that provides real-time integration between multiple data sources and applies business rules and standard mappings. And provides that single source of truth for federated data sources. We still use Epicenter even though we have PLM. PLM just becomes a more comprehensive data source, if you will, for Epicenter, but it still has utility, and you'll see why in a second. And then the services layer. So we have built around standard services to surface protocol information or study information to be consumed by various other applications or systems within our CTMS domain. So if we look at graphically what Epicenter looks like, it integrates information from various systems, PLM being one of the major ones now, obviously, because that holds our single source of truth for most of our study information. But we still do have information that's specific to grants and contracts and financial information, which isn't contained in PLM, and our participant tracking system, and as well as our IRB. So these data sources are all integrated. These data sources are all integrated to make one cohesive set of services that can be consumed by our downstream applications. And so we have a study description service, a study status service, sponsor info, funding, financial site information services. And then, this is what I just demoed, users entering data, protocol data, core data into PLM. That the same could be said for each of these other systems too, is that, there's a separate UI, obviously, for each of these other systems that federated data gets entered into. And then here's what I'm going to demo today is we also built an application, a front end over all these services that can sort of surface all this information into one front end, sort of a protocol or study inquiry application. And then we also take the data from all these services and push them out to our Epicenter, Data Mart, or our UDP, our Unified Data Platform. And then from there, of course, that gives us all kinds of capabilities to do protocol searches, decision support, business intelligence. But also, we use it to push our studies out to mayoclinic.com, our website, our external website. And then we also use these services by our CT.gov, our clinicaltrials.gov application, which hopefully I'll have a few minutes to show you today too as well. So the information flow from the user to CT.gov really goes into our master study record, and then our services from Epicenter are used to push that out to clinicaltrials.gov. Okay, let's take a quick peek at Epicenter. Okay, so this is our Epicenter homepage. I'm going to look at individual studies. So it's going to want me to log in again, I guess. Okay, so I'm going to look at an individual study, show you what that looks like. So I'm going to search for a study. So it gives me a nice search interface here. I'm going to look for other staff studies because I don't have any studies that are interesting, obviously. So I'm going to look for Dr. Kosla, one of Dr. Kosla's studies. And I'm going to look at his studies where he's a PI. And it's going to running a search. And I'm going to take a look at this interventional study of Dr. Kosla's here. So now I'm really into the heart of the Epicenter, which again is all it's doing is integrating all the data from PLM, from our IRB, from all the other data sources that have pertinent information about a study, and bringing them together into one user interface. So I start out here with sort of the description where I have the attributes of the study. It's an interventional, it's a treatment study, drug phase 2, study synopsis. I click on the eligibility tab and I can see the eligibility information. And again, all this information right here is coming from PLM, actually. The contacts, it brings up the study team roster. Again, I didn't show you this in PLM, but we define our study teams in PLM. So again, all the key study staff, the IRB study roster, all these information are coming from PLM. Let's look at regulatory information next. So I can look at Mayo IRB information. I can tell that it's enrolling, the submission dates, the type of application, how many enrollments, how many accruals have been approved by the IRB. It's a greater minimal risk study, etc. I can also look at the CT.gov information for this study. It's an FDA mandated study. It's NCT number. It's recruiting. And results have been posted and the dates. No, excuse me, results are required but not posted yet. And then this is kind of useful too. Now this integrates with our participant tracking system, and it kind of gives the study teams an idea how they're progressing against their accrual targets. So this study had an overall target of 120 accruals. We can see we had 31 screen failures, 6 withdrawals so far. And to date, we should have 50 accruals. Our actuals are 31. And so it kind of graphs our progress against a straight line plan, if you will. So that's kind of useful information. There's some financial information they can get, you know, who the funder, where the funding's coming from, They can see their budget against expenses, et cetera. So this is, again, Epicenter integrating data from our financial systems into one front end. Okay, so that's kind of a quick tour of Epicenter. Again, I will stop here and see if there are any questions that I could answer. Again, this is two things, right? You can see the data integration. You can see it pulling data from various sources, but under the covers here, which I can't really demo, is what's another valuable piece is the services-oriented architecture that it provides. That surfaces standard, reliable, consistent study information to other consuming systems.
Yeah, this is Michael. I just made a comment is that the Epicenter serves as a very important source, information source for all the other research system to get protocol-related information from. So for instance, for the CRTU that Bob just referred to, our protocol tracking system and a research study participant scheduling system, we pull information from this Epicenter interface, which is a set of APIs that's been built over time. And Bob, if I'm correct, we also the CT.gov registry system also use the APIs from Epicenter.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Okay. Let's move on. I can get back into the presentation here. Okay. Our last part of today's agenda is our clinicaltrials.gov registration and compliance management system. So the purpose and objectives of this was to ensure compliance with federal regulations, obviously, for clinical trials reporting, and to automate to the degree we can the registration process. We wanted to reduce time and effort and burden on the investigators for the clinical trials registration, compliance management, and then, like I said, reduce time and effort for clinical trials registration and being able to properly select the right studies that need to be registered, and also providing some pre-population of the forms within the PRS system of clinicaltrials.gov. Our scope, so this actually, kind of Michael alluded to this, we did things a little out of order. I mean, our clinical, of all the systems I showed you, our clinicaltrials.gov system here is the one we first built probably back in 2010-ish. So at that time, the scope was confined to CT.gov registration and compliance. We initially didn't attempt to do anything with results reporting. And actually, at that time, I don't think results reporting were even part of clinicaltrials.gov. We added that on some capabilities around results reporting later, which I'll show you as well. But initially, results reporting weren't part of our scope. The cancer studies are not part of the scope as well because they're prepared and registered usually by the NCI. So it's really for Mayo initiated and sponsored studies that we're really talking about here, and non-cancer, in the non-cancer world. And the project, like I said, did not address results reporting. This is sort of a high level, flow chart of what happens in our system. It starts out by, this is a little data diagram too. I apologize for this. it says it's pulling from our IRB system, but it really now it's pulling from PLM. And we filter out protocols that need to be registered. So in other words, are they FDA mandated, or are they interventional studies that that would be required to be registered for publications, et cetera. So we pull out the appropriate studies, and then we extract them out of PLM. And then what happens is our ORS, our Office of Regulatory Research Services, goes through the application then and determines for sure, that takes a quick look to make sure that the ones that were filtered are indeed to be registered. And then what happens is the system creates sort of a pre or in progress registration and sends it up to the PRS system. And then we also send an email to the investigator saying, okay, we've generated this in progress registration for you. Please go out and complete it. So they actually go into the PRS system then and finish off the registration that we started for them. And then there's also a monitoring part of the system where our ORS folks can determine if indeed the PI registered or didn't register, and generate email reminders to the PI if the registration hasn't taken place yet. So that's kind of an overview. So we, in real quick terms, we extract the protocols, determine which ones need to be registered. We complete a in-progress registration form directly in the PRS system. We email the PI, say, okay, here's a link to your registration. Please go out and complete it. And then we have sort of a compliance monitoring where they can, where we can generate reminders to the PI to complete the registration. I think I mentioned this a little earlier, but here's the protocols that we do select for registration. So that filter component is filtering out FDA applicable phase 2 to 4 clinical trials, drug and devices. We did have to add later, after the original write, the requirement for NIH funded studies now are added to our filter. And then our other interventional studies required for journal publication. Okay, any questions before we take a look at our clinical trials system? Okay. Log in. Okay, the first thing that comes up is just some pie charts of telling us various status of things in CT.gov. This first one here is the red is 232 studies awaiting completion by the owner, meaning the PI. 611 studies waiting action by the ORS, meaning determining whether registration is actually needed, and then how many have actually been uploaded to the PRS system. Now, I'm in a development environment, so this is all, just made up data. So the numbers don't mean much here. But let me start out. Okay, so there's several tabs up here. The initiation and registration tab is what is the first step in the process. So after the we've filtered out the studies that we believe, the system believes need to be registered. And it gives them an indication of whether or not owners need to be assigned, and if it's an FDA mandated study or not. So the first thing that would happen is the Office of Regulatory Services would go in here and say, assign an owner. So in other words, if I click on the owner, these are all the registered users from CT.gov, from Mayo. So I'm just going to assign ownership to the PI, and say, once I assign owner, then the registration in progress in the PR system will be generated, and will have it will be assigned to the particular owner that we've designated here. So I just go through that list and do that, and just confirm and save changes. I'm going to confirm again. Okay, so they just go through that list and take the appropriate action. They can also choose not to register a particular study for whatever reason as well. And then it goes down here. You can see protocols that were scheduled for registration today. So you can see the one I just said here to register is down here, the third one. And so what happens at the end of the day here is that there's a batch job that runs that will take all 4 of these here and create that in progress skeleton, if you will, PRS registration for the study. And I think we complete about 1/3 of the application in terms of data element count. And that's the data that we have, in PLM right now. And then along with that registration in PRS system, the email gets sent to each of these owners telling them that the registration's out there, please go ahead and complete them. And then the compliance check is where we're monitoring then how they're coming with respect to their registration. So this list is all the sort of open PRS in progress applications that are out there. And when they were last updated. And the PRS, not the PRS, our Office of Regulatory Services can go out here then and schedule a reminder. So it tells them how many notices have been sent already, but they can schedule another reminder to be set to be sent on a particular day. And then the batch job again runs that night and sends another reminder to the owner to complete the registration. We have this plus sign over here, which is kind of nice. That gives them more detailed information about the study, basic information like the NCT identifier, because there is none yet because we haven't completed the registration here. It's in progress, etc. There's IRB information, just a good set of information to evaluate the study. How much time we have? I won't show this, but there's well, maybe I will. So we can initiate results tracking. In other words, decide if results are really required for the study. And then once that happens, then they can track those particular studies that they've identified to see if results are being posted when they should. So we don't send any information, obviously, out there about results, but we do monitor to see when and if results are posted based on if they're due, required, etc. Okay, we have 4 minutes. I'll stop there. And we'll take questions, I guess.
Well, thank you
Thank
very
you.
much, Robert and Michael and everybody else at Mayo. Anthony, did you want to, Tony, did you want to field any questions at this time?
That'd be great. I have just a few minutes. I mean, I have several questions. Some of them relate to the specifics of how Mayo does things and assigns things. In the interest of time, and I don't imagine everybody wants to just speak all at once. If anybody has questions and wants to send them to me, I can put them all together in a single document and send them over to the Mayo group if they'd be willing to do that. There is a couple in the chat. Guys, if you'd be interested in doing that. One of them is from Jane A. What fields do you pre-populate for clinical trials protocol registration?
Hi, Emily. Good morning. How are you?
Oh, Scott, your mic's on. Okay. So the question was for the Mayo group, what fields do you pre-populate in the clinical trials protocol registration?
Well, I don't have an enumerated list here in front of me, but a good look at that would be if we looked at, go back to PLM and looked at the main study definition. I can get there. Maybe it's logged me out again.
Sure. And that's
but if you recall, you know, we had things like study title, synopsis, basically all these things for sure. Oops, I got to go to the correct record.
these are done by PRS administrators at Mayo.
So these items, this is again from PLM. They're generated by the study teams, and then they get pushed up to the PRS system through Epicenter. Right? So things like the title, the lay title, acronym, synopsis, the intervention type, the study type, intervention type, phases, primary purpose, all this eligibility criteria, all that goes up to CT.gov through that system.
Great. And this is Grace has a question. This was a custom built system from Mayo, right? Can you give an approximation for how much time it took to develop something like this?
Hi, you're talking about the clinical trials registration system, right?
Yeah, I think the question is for all three systems. So I can say that the CT.gov registry and the Epicenter are both homegrown solutions. The PLM is based on a Velo's e-research module. In terms of CT.gov, it was a relatively small effort. I think it was primarily Bob and I and another developer, Tom Johnson, at the time. I think it took us between the three of us, and actually Tom did most of the heavy lifting in terms of programming. I want to say maybe 6 months. Does that sound right?
Yeah, I'd say 6 to 9 months, something like that.
Okay, yeah.
What happened?
Epicenter and the PLM, they are much larger effort. But I would say that probably the especially with PLM, most of the time is invested in getting the, quite frankly, getting the consensus from different stakeholders, and which we can finalize the requirements and all that. In terms of our actual development effort, that Bob, do you have an idea that how much programming time that we invest into a PLM?
Well, PLM was a big project. It was 3 years, and it grew in scope. But what drove a lot of the effort was, I didn't highlight this, but it actually replaces much of what used to be our cancer center systems. So PLM along with a homegrown registration system were all part of the PLM scope that took 3 years, and it did replace all of our cancer center systems. So it was a pretty big project.
What is the interest level in Mayo of actually sharing some of this with sites who wanted to do something like this?
Michael, I'll let you take that one, or Jenny. Or...
Yeah, so definitely a lot of the logical models, things like study master data, master study information, and definitions and all that. We are happy to share with other institutions. We are happy to share like things like CT.gov and Epicenter, but frankly, I'm not sure how easy it would be to share these systems because there's so many. Like I said, it's a custom built solution. There are so many integration with our own internal systems that I'm not sure how practical you can say take our clinical trial.gov registry system and just plug into your environment. Tony, I don't know if that answer the question.
Yeah, I think so. It's not like, you didn't develop a product that you can go and buy off the shelf. It's kind of severely integrated within your current infrastructure. So
yes, that's correct.
But as far as working a solution, this is an example of what can be done, and I'm sure there's lessons learned. We all learn things as we do things like this too, and I think some of the questions from the group will likely be related to the actual review process at the level of the reviewer, whoever the PRS administrator is, like the specific fields and what member of the study team enters, who verifies it. Those are kind of questions that are specific to the PRS administrator. Is there a representative of the PRS administrators also on the line from Mayo that we could direct some of those questions?
Yeah, hi, Tony. This is Jody Clockey. I'm a PRS administrator here at Mayo Clinic. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, thank you, Jody. Thank you for being a part of this.
Yeah, hi. I'd like to address the question regarding the pre-populated fields that are entered in and that are sent to the PRS system. Those are the study identification area, the responsible party, the oversight section, the brief summary, study design, and eligibility criteria too, just to answer that question. And then
you would verify that before it goes out to the other systems, or is it automatic?
So that's what's pre-populated into the systems. Once that's pre-populated, our office does look at that provisional record that is created, and then sends the email out to the responsible party and the study teams to verify and to complete that record. And once we do that, and once the study teams complete that record, and it is their choice to reach out back to us to verify it and to look for compliance. Otherwise, they go ahead and they complete it and they release it and send it on to the reviewers.
Well, I want to thank you very much. I do want to interrupt and say additional questions. Tony, you'll coordinate from your community. And we're very grateful that you're willing to consider answering them. We are considerably over time, I regret. So unless there is a final burning question or statement.
Yeah, I see the time too. I'm sending out an email now to the task force asking if anybody has any questions, and I'll send them out to Mayo afterward.
And this, and we can post the slides on the CD2H site with this recording. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'd say so, right, Michael?
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you.
Excellent.
And Tony, this is Jody Clockey. We could, our PRS administrators, we have a team of 3 of us here at Mayo. We could answer questions at the next CT.gov task force meeting, if that would help.
You took the words right out of my mouth. I thought maybe at the next meeting, if you'd like to jump on and give a quick little overview and then answer any of the questions, I'll send you the questions beforehand so you have them in advance.
Excellent.
Absolutely. We'd be happy to do that.
So
if we could also have access to the MP4 and the slides, we can share them with the task force as well.
yes, they'll be posted on the CD2H site at
Awesome.
a minimum.
I'll have a link there.
And we'll give you those links. All right. So thank you, everybody. I appreciate your participation, and I hugely appreciate Mayo's generosity in terms of time and shared intellectual talent to overview this system. It's very impressive. Thank you, everybody.
Very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.